So I am neither a cook or a chef, but I enjoy cooking, and I figured now that we're moving into the cold months that it'd be fun to share my personal recipe for broth. Now, this recipe in particular, it takes a very long time to cook. I prefer to cook it a long time just to get nice, bold, strong flavors out of everything I've got. And you could basically make it into one of 4 different types of broths. For today's episode, we're just doing vegetables, but all you'd have to do to change it up to be carnivorous would be adding in the bones and skeleton of another animal. If you want a chicken stock, you throw in a chicken. If you want beef broth, you throw in some beef bones and stuff from steaks, stuff like that, to give it some of that flavor and aroma. And if you wanted it to be a pork broth, you just get a pork shank. That's all you gotta do. It's not very difficult. So without further ado, my name's Nick Lanza. This is the Fatter Dapper. In today's vlog, I'm sick and I want some soup. So let's make some broth. For this particular recipe, you're gonna need one particular piece of hardware, and that is a big old stock pot. This one in question I got at a thrift shop for literally $2. It's got a little valve here on the surface, so you have the ability to basically close it to keep some pressure in, or leave it open to let the pressure out. It is exceptionally deep, and because this thing has lived in storage for a little while, I'm gonna need to rinse it out real fast, make sure that everything in there is nice and clean before we start throwing in our beloved food. And now we'll go ahead and salt our water with a pretty hefty dose, considering we're using salt water. Just throw all that straight in there. Yeah, that'll do nicely. Because we are using such a large pot for this, that much salt is really not that big a deal. Really, you want to salt it to taste. For me, I want it less salty so that when I store it, I can add as much saltiness as I need later. For example, if I'm making a risotto, I'm going to be adding in cheese to the dish, right? That's got its own salt level. I don't want to over salt it so that it's just making you pucker for no reason. But if I'm adding it to something like, say, a stew, right? Okay, at that point we'll need to add in salt to make sure that it's salted correctly, because you're not necessarily adding in cheese or other salty elements into a stew. While this boils up, let's go chop our veggies. For this dish, it's very straightforward, it's very simple. It's a lot of root vegetables and a couple of greens. Pretty straightforward. Start with the simple things. We've got some good old Italian curly parsley. We got some thyme, some rosemary. We'll be using an entire sprig of this for this dish. We got some bay leaves. We got some fennel seed and black pepper, uncrushed black pepper. We're gonna throw in whole corns for this and then grind a couple because there are different flavor profiles in either side of it. Again, most of this dish is to taste. It is not necessarily one, you gotta do it this way. If you like a little more herbaceousness, throw in more of the greenery. If you like more of the rootiness, throw in more of the rooty stuff. It's just preferential. I will put it out there that if you're doing chicken, sub out the fennel seed for some sage. Truthfully, if you've done any meal prep before, you already know that good old fennel seed is used for sausage. So if you want to encapsulate some of that profile, go ahead and use it. If you don't like it, don't use it. It's that easy. I, on the other hand, am a fan of the flavor this gives, so I'm going to get a tablespoon of this and about 2 tablespoons of the black peppercorns. There we go. Put that straight in. For these guys, the bay leaves, honestly, just two or three pretty decently sized fellas will do the job. Just by adding in the black pepper, it's already changing colors. We've got our rosemary, this being probably one of the easiest things to do. You just want to kind of bruise it up a bit so that it starts releasing its flavor. And then I'll break it up into the pot itself so that our tea, because functionally that's what we're making right now, begin to brew. I also prefer a stronger rosemary hit, so I'm going to go ahead and actually grab even more. For the thyme, it's a little bit different. You want to not overdo it, per se. You also don't want to underdo it. I'm just going to grab a bunch of it, this stuff being super fresh. So like even in my plugged up state, I can still smell it. It's quite fresh, it's quite nice. Given how many things are going in, That looks pretty good. And for the parsley, it's not gonna be hard. We're just gonna pull some stuff straight out the top here. Get some of these guys, and then we'll just chop it rough and throw it straight in. For the next big thing that we're throwing into the pot, it's gonna be a lot of these leafy bits from the celery. The truth is, you want the celery, because celery adds good flavor, good taste, and everything else. We don't want this bulbous bit down here on the end. Go ahead and just whack that off. And we don't care about how clean cut it is, because we're boiling it to death. I'm also doing this at the worst possible time while I'm sick, so I know I'm going to be snotting a storm because these are some very ripe, very fresh onions, and I can already feel it hitting my nasal cavity. Oh my goodness. For my onion of choice is always going to be a sweet onion. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because many people, when they get their garlic, it's not normally this small. And in my own recipe, I use 5 cloves because it adds such great flavor. But because of how tiny these are, I'm only just gonna chop them in half, squeeze out the good stuff, and then get another little one. That way it's actually equal to like 5 good-sized cloves. If you really wanna take this up a notch, roast it in some olive oil so that it's like squeezable and all that, and then throw it in. Whole new flavor. It's crazy good. Now, if you know anything about leeks, the last ingredient for this, you know that they grow in the ground, and as a result, the ringlets capture and trap dirt inside of the leaves. So you're gonna wanna cut down as far as you can without eating too far into your white section. So that way, when you cut into it, you can clean each of the individual layers and then throw them into your stock pot. For me, I like to cut right near the bulb right there, because as you can tell, the unadulterated white center there looks phenomenal. And I'll then take my blade, just run it down the middle like so, break it all up, I'll quarter it even, just for dispersal throughout the pot, and then I'm going to go rinse these layers off just to make sure there's nothing on the inside. There we go, throw those in, these are all washed. So now that everything's in the pot, we're gonna let this thing sit for hours. Most people's recipes that I've seen online do it for like an hour and a half at most. I and my friends, we like to let this thing roll for up to 6, sometimes even 8 hours. We find the longer it runs, it's just like a soup, just starts to steep and become deeper and deeper flavored, and also deeper and deeper colored, because the proteins that hold the plant material together start to break down. So instead of just getting the flavor of it, you're also 100% getting some of the essence of the plant material in your stuff. This is why I peel stuff, I take layers off, because I want it to be the vegetables I'm eating and not the dirt or the ground that it was raised in being eaten, if that makes sense. It is currently, and I double checked to make sure that my watch wasn't wrong, 8:17, and I started this at around 2 o'clock. We have simmered and steeped for a very long time. Our veggies and everything have now sunk to the bottom, which means all that good stuff has come out of them. And at this point now, the softer materials are starting to break down. It will create a layer of things on the bottom, and that's why we get stuff like cheesecloth, so we can pour this into our jars, use the cheesecloth to kind of separate out the chunky solids and stuff like that, and make sure none of the nasty stuff comes along with us. It's definitely potent. You can smell a lot of the herbs. May have gone a little too heavy on the fennel actually, even though it is just a single tablespoon, which is what my recipe normally goes for. You can smell all the different aromatics and the alliums especially. And I can tell just by smelling it that there's not a lot of salt in this. I did add a little bit here and there. And of course, I'm sick, so like my flavor palette's a little jacked anyway. But I know that based on what I'm able to still pick up, if I were to add any more, it might be too much for some people. So at this stage, I'm just not going to add any more salt. And instead, I'm going to let it boil to concentrate it down some. That way, this can all fit into 6 quart-sized containers. And at this point, I'm just going to give it a little sample. Yeah, just a little bit more salt, and that will be perfect. That's really good. And oh, there it is. A little bit of pepper burn. I doubled what I normally put in for this. The black pepper is doing its job. Very happy with this. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that I am not canning this per se. This is literally just gonna get put into jars, let to cool, then seal them and put them into the fridge because they're all getting dispersed pretty much immediately. I have some friends and family that like my recipe that would rather me just make it because I enjoy cooking and give it to them so that they can have something nice to use later on. They will in turn freeze it. Sometimes I'll freeze it myself. As is, I actually have 2 other batches of this already in my freezer because I use it pretty consistently for things like my mushroom risotto, stuff like that. Proper canning technique is not something that I myself know how to do just yet. If you're new around here, this whole channel is about my journey in expanding my knowledge and sharing what I learn as I go along so that we can all learn together. And if there are people who are more skilled in this than I am, please sound off in the comment section. Talk to us because we live in a day and age where there's so much information we don't know anything. And I'd rather have videos like this where we have people who are much more knowledgeable, whether they be culinary experts, work in the restaurant industry, or just are chemists who understand that food is chemistry. Whatever the case might be, those types of people being able to sound off and share some of the knowledge is absolutely vital, in my opinion. So here we are, nearly 10 hours later, And I've got 11 25-ounce jars of my base. Now, I call this stuff vegetable stock, soup base, whatever you want to call it. The reality is it's whatever you want it to be. The recipe is that flexible. For risotto, all I'll need now is white wine, butter, and arborio rice, right? For a, say, more traditional French dish like bourguignon, all I need to get is beef bones and let them steep for a while so that the collagen does its thing, and then go throw it in with the rest of the stew. It's very versatile. It's why I make it the way that I do. And if you really wanted to, you could just treat this like an onion soup right now and chug it. And it is delicious. I actually know some folks who do drink this because of how chuggable it is. But with that said, I am going to go clean up the kitchen, probably drink some NyQuil, shower real fast, and then go to bed. I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy.